Coogs House. All right. The Houston Cougars host Sam Houston State in a week. They've got to have a win. But what do they got to do to get that done and not be embarrassed on national television?
You are Locked On Cougs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Cougs, the daily podcast about your Houston Cougars. I'm your host, Houston-born teacher and coach Parker Ainsworth, to break down all things Cougs. If you're a U of H fan or just a hater who can't step by, please be sure to subscribe down below. That we can listen to the Cougs into your newsfeed each and every day. We appreciate you making Locked On Cougs your first listen of the day. Welcome back to the YouTube channel. That's where you found us. It's good to see you again. Remember, we're giving away tickets to our two friends here, Juan Trejo 938. Talking to us about the Houston and OU game in 2016, and then Aubrey Morgan 4872 for her reminder of the Louisville game in 2016. Remember, those giveaways are for tickets to this weekend's Sam Houston State game. I still need you guys to reach out to me. I have seen comments actually still, which indicates that you're saying this, I think. But again, you can find me on any social media platform at Painter512, or you can email the show at locougspod@gmail.com. Now, with all of that said, obviously we may be doing a giveaway on social media, so make sure you follow things at that point. Today's episode will be breaking down how Houston can avoid embarrassment and win a must-win game this weekend, what kinds of things they have to do. So as we peel back the curtain here and go back to look at the ticker on the sideline, I want to go through my three keys to the game. There's also going to be the three segments to today's show. The first thing is that Houston's got to be able to use the screen game to take advantage of their speed. They also need to force Sam Houston State offense into long drives, and they need to keep a clean sheet. Now, I want to break down a little bit about what each of those are and why those are so important for the Houston Cougars this weekend as they prepare for what we hope is the victory formation at the end of the night in TD-ECU Stadium. Now, I want to go through a couple things here, but if you have not heard about Sam Houston State football, they're new to FBS. They're very talented and did very well in the FCS level. Please check out yesterday's episode with Corey Hogue from Dave Campbell's Texas Football. He did a great job of breaking down the personnel and schematics and history of Bearcat football and how they got here. This is a talented football team, folks. They played BYU down the wire. It was 14-0. It was 7-0 in the fourth quarter, if I'm not mistaken. I'm watching my clips. And honestly, that BYU team then goes and beats an Arkansas team in Arkansas. Like, this is a talented BYU team that Sam Houston State took to the brink. So it's going to be a difficult game and I think a fun competitive game. But this is not the FCS opponent you'd think you're running up on. Now, one thing that Houston can take advantage of on offense, and the opening thing I think they've got to do after watching the clips of Sam Houston State versus BYU, is playing the screen game well. Now, I admit I looked at the BYU tape a lot closer than I did whatever I could find on YouTube. It wasn't on YouTube TV in the same kind of capacity, but what I could find on YouTube from it, I looked at a lot closer than the Air Force game, because the Air Force runs such a unique offense. It doesn't really pertain to what Houston's going to do. It's not great scout film. BYU. Sam Houston State did have a bye week leading up to Houston, and so they might look a little different. But based on basic alignments and things like that, I think they'll show Houston a lot of stuff that actually has a lot of space on the outsides. The outside is also where their worst athletes on defense are, and where, for all my complaining this week about drops, where I think Houston's best athletes on offense are. And I'm asking for screen passes. I'm saying screen passes are going to be integral to this game, because as good as Sam Houston State is up front in the middle in the run game, they pack 6 guys in there in the box. And I pulled up clips to look at basically 2x2 kind of stuff. So 2 receivers out wide on both sides, 1 running back in the backfield, 10 personnel. Sam Houston State in those instances went 3 defensive guys over 2 offensive guys on the wide side of the field, 2 over 2 on the short side of the field, and through the other 6 guys in the box. That makes it, they have 6 guys. Houston theoretically has 5 guys blocking, and then the mesh of the handoff. If it's a true read, I guess theoretically you have a bonus person in the box, but one of those 2 on the pass side is tightened down. So it's not the best run look on most things. Now, if you're just moving people off the ball, can you get some yards anyway? Of course, that's always going to be the case. But BYU, San Diego State's very, very talented up front, and BYU had some trouble doing that early in the game for sure. They kind of ran through them over the course of the game. The depth kind of caught up to Sam Houston. But as I look at this, the way it's set up is you're going to have a lot of opportunities to throw screen game into potential like matches where you get like a one-on-one with your receiver and the safety at the 8-yard marker, and that's kind of the only guy there to make the tackle, right? If you have the 2-on-2 on the short side of the field, like I mentioned, then suddenly you're throwing the ball out there to Sam Brown with Joseph Manjack blocking, and so Manjack takes away the corner. It's Sam Brown and a safety, and I'm sure he's a great kid, but the San Diego State safety's not their best athlete by any stretch, right? And so suddenly you've got Sam Brown and him one-on-one. I'm taking my chances, and even if he gets tackled, I'm looking at 7-8 yards, right? Like that's a thing I think Houston's got to take advantage of. We also saw Matthew Golden at his best in the kickoff return game last week. Obviously, Specialties Player of the Week, a couple big returns, and the big touchdown. I have frequently heard, especially guys coming through Houston like Marcus Jones, talk about how, honestly, once you catch the ball out there and a screen pass, and it's a true screen pass with a lineman out in front of you and that kind of stuff, it begins to feel a lot like the same kind of a thing. If that's how Matthew's seeing the field the best right now, that might be a way to get him involved early. We saw him have success with that a couple times this year already, and we saw him have success with it last year as a freshman already, a year ago. So I feel like the screen game, both in the traditional just wide receiver bubble screen that turns into basically a really wide handoff, and the more traditional screen with linemen out there actually running around and lead blocking could be a big, big deal for Houston because it gets their athletes in space and gets Houston's guys, their best ball carriers the ball against some of the, we'll say, not as talented, to be nice, defenders from San Houston State. If they're going to do something on the interior screen thing, it would need to be a middle screen to a receiver. I was really impressed by watching what Sam Houston State did in covering the back on screens. Their linebackers peeled really, really well and followed the back where they went on those kind of things. So I don't know that they'd be as susceptible to those kind of things, but I do think that a more traditional screen, even a middle screen to a wide receiver, is going to work because of how well those guys get after the pass rush and stuff, that a screen game is going to kind of effectively pull them, out of the play on what turns into, in terms of, moving the football, a really, really wide run play. It's also a short, easy throw. And so I do think it's the kind of thing that Houston should be able to take advantage of. Now, I think that there's other things that Houston needs to do. I don't think it's a one trick kind of game by any stretch, but I do think it's interesting when we look at people moving up in the world in conferences. As Houston moves into the Big 12, Houston played Rice and UTSA. They moved to the American Athletic Conference, and now they're playing St. Houston State, who's moving into the FBS, Conference USA, after having dominated FCS. People are moving up in the world all around us, and if you're looking to move up in the world with your company, you need to go to LinkedIn Jobs, because these days every new potential hire can feel like a high stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have the access to the best qualified candidates available, and that's why you got to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster and for free. Post your job to linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your jobs for free. Terms and conditions apply. Now, I also want to tell you a little bit about some, I'm not a big cooker. We have a 3-month-old. I don't cook a lot. But if you are trying to, get on the grocery game and those kind of things, on the time to get out and about, let's talk a little bit about DoorDash, our newest partner here at Locked On. If you're missing the syrup for your pancakes, or you just ran out of the latest coffee creamer, or you got a new recipe that you're not sure what all the ingredients are, make sure you check out DoorDash. DoorDash can help you with thousands of grocery stores to choose from. You can find the best in your neighborhood and boost your local economy with each and every order. You get exactly what you ordered, or they will make it right. So sit back and enjoy qualified groceries just like you picked them yourself. Want more value? You can save on all your grocery and restaurant favorites with $0 delivery fee on all eligible orders with Dash Pass membership. Get 50% off your first DoorDash order with $20 value when you use code LOCKEDONCollege at checkout. Limited time offer and terms apply. That's 50% off of up to $20 with no minimum subtotal and $0 delivery fees on your first order when you download the DoorDash app in the App Store and enter code Locked On College. Don't forget that's code Locked On College for 50% off your order with DoorDash. All right. I mentioned here that the second thing I think Houston's got to do, because it's not going to be a one-horse race or anything like that, is they've got to force the Sam Houston State into long drives on offense. Now, I think that's important to note because, frankly, that's bluntly a thing we have not seen Sam Houston do. Sam Houston the defense is tremendous. They're a really, really good defensive team. They've played 2 games and have 3 points on offense, right? Now, that's not to say that they couldn't figure it out and change things around. We talked to Corey yesterday. He talked to how they, in the bye week could be getting things right, may even be changing up who you see at quarterback some. But if Keegan Shoemaker, the starter in their first 2 games, is the guy, they're a turnover-prone team. He has thrown 3 interceptions in 2 games, and I feel like Houston is likely to pick him off another couple times if he's the guy in there. If it's Grant Cannell, he's not very fleet of foot either, and both guys, I think, are very susceptible to the Sack Avenue pass rush. That being said, if you keep them from making the chunk plays, because they, I'm sure, will find ways to try and get Noah Smith or Ife Adi. Corey never said his name. Ife Adi, I believe, is the talented receiver I'm watching on the outside. He's from Mansfield, Texas. You also have Noah Smith, a redshirt. Both these guys are redshirt seniors, and Noah Smith is from Cy Ridge. Both these kids are really, really good football players. Both these kids are on the outside receivers. If Houston lets them get loose behind them for a chunk play, you set them up in field goal range, set them in for, a gimmicky, gadgety kind of play. It's their Super Bowl kind of thing. They throw a Philly special for a touchdown. Those are the ways that I feel like that the Sam Houston State Bearkats would score. I don't see them scoring after watching them through. I got to watch them against Air Force as well, because their offense against Air Force's defense is much more applicable than the other way around. They're not the kind of team that's going to go 4 yards, 4 yards, 4 yards, or 4 here, 6 there, 7 there, 3 there. Like, they're not going to do those shorter, chippy kind of things, occasional 15s and occasional 12s. That's not how they're going to be successful, because they just don't have the hogs to do it. Up front, they start 3 sophomores on the offensive line. 2 of them are redshirt guys. So I guess they're third year in college, but it's still obviously a younger group up front. They're not the 350-pound type guys, not the 340-pound type guys I could see in Big 12 play by any stretch. They do have a 330-pound left tackle. He's big, strong. I don't know if he'll be playing football after college or not, but he is. They're obviously, they put him at left tackle because they think he's their most talented guy. But he's a transfer redshirt sophomore, and so I feel like, honestly, it's junior college. I'm sorry, not just a transfer, a junior college sophomore, redshirt sophomore, and I feel like, even at that point, you'll see Houston take advantage of Sack Avenue in a big, big way. Nelson Caesar's having a great year for all the flaws and all the things we didn't talk about Houston that have not gone well so far. Nelson's had a really strong year. This could be a multi-sack game for him. Ogwegbu kind of got in the rhythm of things last week when things were close in the first half, definitely. Hakeem had the forced fumble, sack fumble, right? You got a number of different guys that can get involved up front. Dot Nwankwo should be another week healthier. He does a great job pushing stuff around the middle. Things should be moving in the right direction for Houston up front in this game. And if you make them have a long drive, if you make them chip away, eventually your guys are going to, you have better athletes up front, your guys are going to win more times than not. If you lose track of somebody in zone, if you get run into each other on rub route and man, if you let one of those kinds of things happen, then obviously you give them a short field, or you give them the big chunk play and momentum. You could let a touchdown happen behind you, and suddenly you're like, oh crap, what's going on? Like, that's how Sam Houston State scores in this game, is they do something crazy that Houston makes a mistake and lets them get a big chunk, and then they only have to run 3 or 4 plays to get in the end zone, right? They can go 3 or 4 mistake-free plays. They can go 3 or 4 positive plays in a row. It's the idea of making them have the 9, 12, 15. That's where they're struggling in their adjustment from FCS to FBS. I don't want to sell their coach short, Coach Casey Keeler. They did that kind of thing, the shorter drives, and they had a great offense at the FCS level in his first portion of his time there. I don't mean to sell him short at all, but at this level, they're having trouble chipping the ball down the field. And so making them have long drives gives them more opportunities to make mistakes and should force more turnover for the Houston Cougars. Now, in terms of the way their offense lines up, I have to say that honestly, it's nothing crazy we haven't seen before. Nothing crazy that it's a typical classic Big 12 looking spread offense. It just doesn't have the same kind of athletes as like TCU had last week. So schematically, I don't know that it's going to be a whole lot different for Doug Belk and his guys to get ready for. I do think you got to get ready for it. And looking at their depth chart, a little more tight end play. They start on their official depth chart 2 tight ends, so you might see more 12 personnel. Some of those guys will also get in the backfield. They have multiple tight ends that play in the game, not just the 2. So you might see it looks more like an H-back type guy. Those guys get involved in the run game, get involved in the pass game. But I thought Houston's done a good job so far of when a guy is lined up in a tight end formation, lined up in an H-back spot, where he can block and run like a fullback almost. You see a lot of linebackers and stuff tightening down at a Houston's 4-2-5 defense. And so I really think that they're going to be okay. I just will say that, that's something they want to do is they do want to line up with bigger bodies out there to try and cover up. They want to line with bigger tight end type bodies instead of the skill guys to cover up having smaller line type guys is what it appears like to me. I'm not their coach. I'm not on their staff. That's what it appears like to me. Now, as far as running the football goes, they've got the attempt numbers to make you think that they want to do it. Keegan Shoemaker has attempted to run himself, and I think that's frankly probably why he's the starter over Grant Gunnell, because Grant Gunnell has had major knee surgeries and stuff like that in the past and is not quite as fleet of foot. But again, they haven't had great yards per carry. They only have one guy averaging more than 3 yards per carry on the season, and that's Noah Smith, who caught a big reverse, right? So that should say took a big reverse on a handoff. That's a wide receiver that I was mentioning earlier. So I don't feel like we need to be super hyper concerned with the run game from a schematic standpoint. If Houston plays down defense, I mean, they shouldn't they're going to try, right? I'm not saying don't be worried about the run. You always be worried about the run. They're going to try it, but it's not like we have to change everything we're doing to make sure we bottle it up. We got to sell out on sound defense works here, and sound defense will make them eventually make a mistake, because if you give them enough snaps, it becomes very, very clear that they will. Now, I want to talk a little bit about Houston keeping a clean sheet of their own and how important that is in this game. First, we got to talk about our buddies at FanDuel. Now, FanDuel is America's #1 sports book, and it is the NFL season. It's still the kickoff. It's still in the early part of the season. You can go to FanDuel right now and get $200 back in bonus bets. That's $200 back as long as you bet $5. You get $200 back guaranteed, win or lose. Now, as far as this week's game for the Houston Cougars, not a ton of movement here. As I'm looking at it here, they've got Houston as a 12.5-point favorite. The over-under has moved slightly. It was 38.5. It's now down to 37.5 because so many people are going the under. Again, Sam Houston State has 3 points through 2 games this season. So theoretically, Houston could win 31-3 and be under that, right? This is not necessarily an indictment on Houston's offense as much as it's Sam Houston State's offense. I'm taking Houston. I may also take the under on that, though, after watching Sam Houston State's defense and offense and how they're playing football this year. But whatever I do and whatever you do, you got to do it at FanDuel.com and use FanDuel.com/lockedon to kick off the season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. All right, so I mentioned that Houston, as the third thing, has to keep a clean sheet. Now, I use this phrase a lot in coaching, and especially when I was talking to my quarterbacks when I was head coach at middle school. I had coached on the varsity level as an assistant and run game coordinator, and then I've coached them at the middle school level as a head guy and JV level as an offense caller and that kind of stuff. Whenever I'm talking to a quarterback, especially, right, the idea of a clean sheet, even a young 7th grader, right, is super, super important. And what that means is risk mitigation. That means throwing the ball to the right team. That means going through your pre-snap routine and pre-snap reads every single snap, so you're not guessing or going on the fly. Each and every bit of those is going to be super, super important for this game. Because here's the deal. We just spent a whole segment talking about how Sam Houston State's offense will make mistakes if you make them take long drives. If Houston throws the ball away, if Houston can't hold on to the football, if Houston makes the wrong read, if Houston makes the wrong slide in protection, if Houston lets the defense make the plays, the defense will score. That is a good enough defense to score. And I don't mean that to say anything like it's going to happen. If Houston plays soundly, it shouldn't. But the San Houston State defense can set up short fields and do those kinds of things on their own. And so Houston's got to make sure they mitigate all that by doing their jobs and doing them well and keeping the game clean. That means in a pre-snap RPO where you're like, doing a hat count in the box or whatever, right? Making sure that your count is accurate at the snap of the football. That means if you're a receiver running a short drag route on a blitz break, meaning we call it a blitz break, I'll probably explain that. So if they're sending a linebacker, right, a receiver's supposed to cut off his route instead of running a 10-yard dig, you see the linebacker blitzing, you turn it into a 3-yard drag. So you just get across the field, catch the ball in the naked spot of the field really quickly, and then see what you can do with it afterwards, right? That requires really, really quick decision-making, obviously. But in this kind of a game, this can't be the kind of thing where like you're a half step late on making the read on the blitz break. This can't be the kind of thing where you're a half step slow on getting across the field on that drag. We've seen moments in the past where, and people think I'm way too positive. Donovan Smith has his flaws. Every college football player has their flaws. But I've mentioned that there have been times where Donovan Smith is waiting in the pocket because guys aren't creating the separation that they should be on routes, right? We played the same receivers a lot. Maybe part of it would be a rotation in those receivers and getting more guys in the field, more reps. Maybe worth getting fresh legs out there. That's a coaching complaint all issue. But if we can't, they got to create separation, and if we got to be crisp in how we do it. So on those blitz breaks, if you're running the drag route, get across the field, clear the midline, get all the way across, because that's how you get the football. And frankly, you got to get there fast because it's a blitz break. The blitz is coming. You can't leave Donnie back there on an island if they're sending more guys than we have blocking, right? That's one example. Things like a pre-snap read on the quarterback. We were doing the box count, we said a second ago, but a pre-snap read on the receiver, you'll see a lot of times in these Dana Holgorsen offenses he's run since his times at Tech, frankly, the receivers are reading cover 2 or 3 and changing their route based on it. And as long as they and the quarterback on the same page, they've got to be on the same page to this game, right? They got to be clean, got to be sound, because not being on the same page will potentially get the ball to the defense, which will potentially set up St. Houston State to score their first touchdown of the season. And we don't need all that, right? Those kinds of things got to happen. Houston's got to play a clean game. He's got to come out fired up from the start, right? This is the 4th game in a row in the city of Houston for the Houston Cougars. It's the last game before going to a stretch of all Big 12 games after this. Houston needs a win. Houston ought to be hungry for a win. It shouldn't be any more motivation than that, right? I will say, in looking at this game, when we looked at this game on the schedule, I don't know, we were previewing stuff in like May or June, right? San Diego State's moving up to the FCS. What's the big deal? That's one that Houston ought to get, right? And I maintain that like Houston probably should have also gotten Rice, and Houston probably should, like, these are things that should have happened, right? This is a talented team. They won the FCS championship in 2021. They got a lot of the same coaches on staff from that time. They did a great job of recruiting the FCS level. They're moving up, frankly, where their defense does not need a lot of transfer guys to be holding teams like BYU to just 14 points. That means they've got continuity. They got some transfers on offense, right? And they're also having more trouble over there. But this is a talented group of kids at Sam Houston State that I think opening weekend, when they held BYU to 14 and it was a 14-0 game, myself included, before we watched it, because it was late at night, we were talking about the post-game show. Like, we weren't really watching, right? And going back and watching that game since, it becomes very apparent that it was 14-0 because of what Sam Houston State was doing, not necessarily what BYU was doing, right? Air Force was it 13-3, 13-3 because of what Sam Houston State was doing, not necessarily because of what Air Force is doing, right? This is a team that makes you look ugly and bad on the football field. Houston's got to keep their stuff clean and keep building on things and getting ready for big teams down the pipe. But also, just because they got stuff to get better at after seeing them play for a couple weeks, right? They got to be crisper in their reads, got to be crisper in the routes, and I mentioned got to create some separation. Now, if you've got other keys to the game, tell me down below. You can also find me on Twitter, social media, whatever you check your social media. I'm at Ainsworth 512. That's PAINSWORTH 512 on Twitter, Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, TikTok, what have you. I want to remind our winners one more time. That is Juan Trejo 938 and Aubrey Morgan 4872. To make sure you find me on social media at Paints512 or locoogspod@gmail.com and come through so we can get you those tickets, get you to the Sam Houston State game. It's going to be a fun day. It's going to be a great night in Houston. Always good to go see some Cougar football. We'll be watching it here and post-game afterwards. Now, it's called Cougars After Dark, so make sure you log on after dark. It'll be nighttime recording, nighttime live show, I should say, talking all things from the game, all things that went well. Hopefully, it's all things that go well. I guess we'll talk about things that didn't go well as well. That was probably too many wells. Anyway, we'll be talking about all the things that happened in the game, in the post-game show. So make sure you tune in, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications so you know we're live. And remember, Locked On Cougs, Locked On Podcast Network. That means your team every day. And go Cougs.